people are doing? So, oh yes, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. See that phone? Oh man, you can buy it most probably, unless you live in well, most of the other places where it launched other than India, because why the hell would it launch in India, right? It's a fantastic device. Yeah, regardless, it's going up against the X100 Pro, which you can indeed buy in India. Amazing. And both of these phones, oh yes, they have such incredible cameras. Bloody hell. So let's jump right in because there's so much to talk about. I'm not gonna waste time in the intro. So the first and foremost question that anyone would want answered is which bloody color profile to go for, because both of these have options. The X100 has 3, the Xiaomi comes with 2. The Vibrant is what you're looking at for both of these, and it looks good. It looks very vibrant on the X100, which, to be entirely honest, is exactly what you'd want from the vivid colors option. So that's nice. The Xiaomi is going for a slightly more balanced route, and that's fine too, to be entirely honest. And to be frank, I don't really care about the Vibrant. What I really like, it's these two right here. Nice natural colors on the X100 and Leica Authentic. And yeah, it looks great on both. Like, I really like the high contrast on Leica Authentic. I think that's one of the very amazing characteristics about Leica Authentic that really works, because they have really fine-tuned it this time around. Kind of the same thing with Vivo, but they didn't really bump up the contrast as much. Rather, if you do want high contrast, you're gonna have to commit with the X100. It needs to be a tenet that you live by. Then you can use textured mode on the X100 Pro, which, I kind of see the point of textured mode. It's a stylish option. You don't want to use it all the time. It's not a regular color mode to be used, because it's gonna give you results like these, which in a case like this, in a sunset shot like this, I can kind of see it being used. I can kind of see how it can produce some insane looking shots. But to be honest, if you really want consistency, stick with as natural colors. You can see right here. In the previous shot, we had more contrast, a really nice punchy result on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra with Leica Authentic, and this time it's kind of giving us a more flat result. Consistency on the X100 is something else, as it's just been one of the hallmarks of the X100 by far. And yes, I did try out textured mode for coffee as well. It does look really nice. I found that food in general can look very good with textured mode on the Vivo, but it can be underexposed as well, so just bear that in mind. I do like the depth and colors that it brings. That's quite something. And now for our final main camera shot, we have the backlit. I mean, it's my comparison. What did you expect? Regardless, what we have here is an interesting one. So I like the colors on the X100 more. I think they're more realistic. It looks a little bit desaturated on the Xiaomi, just a pinch. And to be entirely honest, between Leica Authentic, which is a natural colors option, and then there's a natural colors, which is, as the name indicates, a natural authentic colors option, I got a nitpick. So the X100 does look more realistic, but it's not a massive difference. I do want to make that very clear. And then for the ultrawide, now the ultrawide on the Xiaomi, it is uniquely wide. Like, there are very, very few cameras on this goddamn planet that can give you such wide shots with the ultrawide camera. I mean, you can tell compared to the X100, which has a fantastic ultrawide, and you'll see why I say that soon enough. But it doesn't go as wide, not even close. Here's another ultrawide shot. Now this one was very late during the day, like the sun was basically about to set. You can kind of see it in the colors. It's very warm, the sunlight that is. And it was a perfect opportunity to test out the details. Now you might look at both of these images and think, oh yeah, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra immediately has more detail. Just look at the brickwork, so much more visibility. But that is not actually true, because the Xiaomi is cranking up the contrast and it's boosting the clarity just enough to make it, or rather give it, an illusion of more detail. Because if you were to crop into 500%, technically we would have to agree that the X100 Pro has more detail. It doesn't appear like that when you look at the wide image, like the full image, but that's just how it is. Even in this backlit shot, the same concept applies. The X100 has the same level of detail. I cropped in and checked once again. It's pointless to show you the same thing over and over, but it looks like the Xiaomi is more detailed. And to be entirely honest, just think about it. Looking like it's a little bit more detailed, especially with an ultra-wide shot, is that enough? I feel like it should be, because it's an ultra-wide shot. You're not going to zoom in on an ultra-wide shot. It doesn't make sense. If it looks detailed enough and it doesn't look over-processed, I think I'd be happy. However, what I'm not happy with on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, the beautiful segues. I don't like the macro mode. It's been a problem for a while on the Xiaomi devices. I believe the Xiaomi 13 Pro added something with the telephoto camera to kind of compensate for the macro mode. Vivo does something similar. This is with the ultra-wide camera, by the way, and you can see how much closer you can get with the Vivo. I like the colors on the Xiaomi, but the Vivo is significantly better even with ultra-wide macro. But it takes it a step further. You can also use the ridiculously high quality periscope camera for macro shots. And in case you're wondering, this is a very small part of one of my paintings. It looks a little odd, I know, but regardless. And I mean, look, the 4.3x periscope macro is good, it's fantastic, but what really sets it apart is the 8.6x macro shot that it can take. It combines digital and periscope zoom. You get plenty of detail, you can probably tell. Now, since we're already talking about zooms, let's check it out. So this is with the main camera, and see, this is a place where the Xiaomi 13 Ultra pulls ahead with the colors. You see, it was very late during sunset, and the Leica Authentic here, it's maintaining a lot of the warmth. You can see it on the pavement, you can see it in the background. It's got a really good amount of warmth that should have been there on the X100 as well, but somehow the natural colors didn't really make it through. I mean, you can't expect perfection all the time. But anyways, this is a 2x zoom. Both of them use 2x sensor crop, and both are very high quality, just so you know. But I did crop in, and guess what I found out? The Xiaomi 13 Ultra does not produce as much detail with the 2x sensor crop as the X100 Pro, which it's a little surprising. I thought that it would be very similar, but that's not really the case. The X100 definitely, the textures alone, there's so much more detail that has been resolved here. It's quite something. And this is not just processing or anything, it's a lot of realistic detail that is being brought out, and that's amazing in my opinion. This is a 3.2x on the Xiaomi, which is optical. Of course, it's digital, well, pseudo digital with the sensor crop and all that jazz on the X100. I cropped in once again, and apparently the level of detail the X100 can produce, it almost rivals the Xiaomi's 3.2x very high quality telephoto camera. That's impressive. That's quite something if you tell me, because I don't expect that much detail preservation from just a singular main camera on the X100. It's a lot of detail that this baby is preserving over here. But anyways, this right here is 4.3x on the X100 and 5x on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Both have fantastic cameras when it comes to periscopes, and both of them can produce a ton of detail. But you see, I also took a 10x shot, and initially you can probably tell, I'm not sure after what happens after you do compression, but you can probably tell that the textures look way sharper on the X100. There apparently is a good reason for that, because I once again zoomed in, or I should say cropped in to 500%, and guess what? More detail on the X100. I guess at this point it shouldn't be a surprise. The X100's detail preservation across the board, all the cameras, not just the main camera or anything like that, basically every single camera, it is bloody phenomenal. There's no two ways about that. Now, of course, we are constantly talking about details. The high-res game is very interesting on both, because every single camera on both of these, well, the rear cameras at least, they all produce 50 megapixel, incredible 50 megapixel shots. And so, of course, with the main camera, when we crop in, I think there's like a pinch, tiny pinch more detail on the X100 Pro. It's not a massive difference, and especially at a 500% crop, it's probably not going to make a big difference for most people, but hey, the more you know. Now with the ultrawide, so something funny happened. I thought I had taken an outdoors ultrawide high-res shot. Turns out I forgot. Don't ask me how it happened, it's never happened before. It bloody eludes me. But anyways, let's zoom in. And just so you know, there was plenty of light, and well, turns out with the ultrawide at high res, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra can produce slightly more realistic detail. I think the X100 is over-processing this image a little bit too much. And that's why even though you can see more textures, you can also see more sharpening, more artifacting, haloing and all that jazz. But then Xiaomi also has a whole ass extra camera back there. I'm talking about the 3.2x telephoto and that as you would expect at this point, also has high-res 50 megapixels. Nothing as such on the X100, and as you would expect, way more detail on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. I mean, what else could even happen, right? Anyways, when it comes to the periscope cameras, see, I get it. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra can technically zoom in further with a 5x versus the 4.3x on the X100. It's not a massive difference, as you can tell. It's a small difference when it comes to just how much zoom you get, but we do get the high resolution on both. And with that, I think both are pretty much the same. Like, both look fantastic here. I don't really have any complaints on either. They look very nice. Simple as that. But then, when we come to selfies, see, now this is where things are gonna get interesting. So, the Xiaomi, dear lord, the Xiaomi selfie and portraits in general, not very good. And you'll see exactly why. This is one of the reasons, it's very flat. In this case, it's both flat and a little overexposed. It's overexposing the highlights and stuff, as opposed to the X100, which is just producing such beautiful skin tones. The contrast is absolutely spot on. Like, I don't really have any complaints. Even with a backlit shot like this, the X100 is consistent. Like, look at the contrast. It is exactly where you'd want it. It's not too high, and neither is it as flat as the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Now then, with selfie portraits, at least in this case, I think the Xiaomi is not doing a particularly bad job, but I still think the Vivo is better. It has more contrast, and that's really the crux of my problems with the Xiaomi selfies. Now this was very difficult, by the way. I could barely even keep my eyes open. The fact that you can even see my eyes is a miracle. So yeah, subscribe if you like that stuff. Regardless, I think the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is it's going a little too crazy with the brightness. It's way too overexposed, and the highlights are there's just no control over them. But when we tried this ridiculous backlit portrait, oh yeah. Look, the Xiaomi is what I would consider to be passable. Like, this is fine. The X100 on the other hand, oh my god. This is what I would like to call a perfect portrait selfie. Given the conditions, I don't think it could have gotten any better. The contrast is perfect, the colors are perfect, the details are perfect. Yeah, that's about as good as it can get, to be entirely honest. Now, night selfies. Yeah, it's pretty much horrible on both. That's just the way it goes. There are very few phones on this planet that can produce good, genuinely good night selfies, and these two win one of them. Now finally, let's talk about portraits. See, this is where things are gonna get very interesting. So the Xiaomi's rear camera portraits, they're fairly good. I don't think they're all that bad, and you can tell in this case, it looks very nice. I really like the skin tones on the Xiaomi as well. I think the X100, the skin tones don't quite look as realistic. They look good, but not quite as realistic as the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. But the real beauty of both these cameras for portraits is that they give you an absolute arseload of options with the focal lengths alone. This is a 35mm shot, which I think is probably one of the perfect focal lengths to take. It's not too up close and personal. You can get beautiful compression, and there's no distortion with 35mm, and with just how good the main cameras are on both of these, especially on the X100 Pro, which we have established at this point, you can guess that the details are not exactly suffering. The 50mm one, this uses sensor crop on both phones. On the Xiaomi, there's something interesting happening. So I'm noticing a vignette around me. It's very mild, simple as that, but it's definitely there. I can see the darkening just around me, and it's very feathered out, very soft, but it's definitely there. You know what? I kind of like it, but I don't know if I want that in every single 50mm shot that I take. Now, of course, we can go even further with both of these. This is a 75mm shot on the Xiaomi, the X100. It's giving an 85mm shot, which, far as I know, has no optical zoom involved. But somehow it's producing more detail than the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. I mean, I don't even have to zoom in. You can see the detail on my arm, my t-shirt, my face. Everything has just a pinch more than the optical 3.2x very high quality zoom on the 13 Ultra. That is not all. The problem on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is very evident. It forces a dreamlike filter on the 100mm zoom option, or the 100mm portrait option. And man, it breaks my heart. That's the best way to put it. I hate that it's forced on. Why not just make it an option? If someone wants a shot like this once in a blood moon, they'll take it. But anyways, you thought I forgot, didn't you? I obviously have a backlit portrait. This is with the Monex zoom, and to be honest, both are doing a fantastic job. I think both have equal levels of detail, which is quite impressive. And the only thing I like a little bit more, just a pinch more, about the X100 Pro is that it has a little bit more contrast. And you know me, I'm a man of high contrast. And the highlight in the background is being handled just a little bit better. The gradient, the fall off is a little bit more pleasing. Also, the bokeh in the background is just delicious. Now the night portrait. So interestingly enough, the X100 Pro, unlike the selfies, the night selfies that is, it doesn't absolutely suck balls. I don't really need to explain any further than that. You can tell that there is only one phone that can handle night portraits, and it's not the Xiaomi 13 Ultra here. Now the night mode. So this is usually my favorite part of any comparison, because no matter how expensive, no matter how good a smartphone's camera might be, more often than not, there's always going to be some or the other low light situation that it cannot handle. So on the X100 Pro, it turns out, it's the night sky. It's still a problem. It's the inconsistency here, because I'll get to why I say that it's inconsistently bad. Because in this case, it's producing too much of a blue night sky. It's smooth, it's a beautiful gradient, it's got enough detail to produce some stars in the sky, which is a good thing. But it's not as good as the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. But of course, there does exist an area where the X100 Pro is basically in a league of its own, and that is ultra low light. Now this right here, I wouldn't even classify this as ultra low light, but it's still pulling ahead. Because a 500% crop, and you can tell the difference, the sheer bloody lunacy of difference in detail. Because goddamn, the textures are perfect on the X100 Pro. You can see every bit of the knife work that I did, while on the Xiaomi it's completely blended together. Now main camera close-ups, luckily enough, it works perfectly on both. I don't think there's gonna be any complaints here. Both seem to produce very nice amounts of detail in the minimal amounts of light that we had, and the focusing was not a problem either. But then this is what I like to call ultra low light. Not just ultra, it goes all the way, it's Pro Max. And it's pretty intense just how much light both of these have captured, given that I couldn't even make out the goddamn painting back there. But of course, let's zoom in on that finger, because yeah, this is where we get some serious differences. So the X100 Pro, it has significantly less noise and somehow is producing more detail as well. Which is quite something if you ask me. I mean, I can see the processing happening, I can see some haloing in some of the areas, but it's a better image than the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, that much is for certain. And yes, I did use tap to focus. This is the maximum amount of detail the Xiaomi could produce. So at this point, I'm pretty sure you know that high contrast, dark night skies, that's kind of my thing. Because in this case, I think both are doing a fantastic job. It's an ultra wide shot, and this is why I said that there can be some inconsistencies with the night sky on the X100 Pro. With the main camera, it produced too much of a blue night sky. Here, the gradient is beautiful, it darkens it immediately, and it looks very nice. Actually, I can see some artifacting in Xiaomi's night sky, which, you know, it's pretty insane. It almost never happens, but it is happening in this case. But of course, that's not all. We have this absolute insanity of a shot. It's backlit and ultra low light. I mean, you can tell the Xiaomi is struggling in this case, as there's basically a limit to which the Xiaomi software can just push itself with the night mode. And the X100, essentially the beauty of the X100 is that it will make you take a very long exposure if it detects that there is just no light. The Xiaomi doesn't do that, and that's kind of why it's falling apart. Now this is another ultra-wide shot, and I guess I may have pushed it a little too far here, because even the X100 is struggling. And you know that when the X100 is struggling, yeah, we've hit a brick wall, because there's no point in pushing things any further. Especially with the ultra-wide camera, no one in their right mind would do this, because it's absolute lunacy. And yeah, I get it, I'm crazy, but I don't think most people who would buy the X100 are. But then zoom, see, this is where things are gonna be even more interesting. So over here we have 2x, and it's 2x sensor crop, or it's supposed to be sensor crop on both. You don't even get the option with night mode on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, by the way. We have to just pinch in and hope for the best. The X100 somehow manages to pull through and gives us a little bit more detail here. Like, yeah, there's a bit of processing going on as well, but for a 2x sensor crop, it's doing a pretty good job and a better job than the Xiaomi. That's the important bit here. Now for 3x, well, of course, the 3.2x optical zoom on the Xiaomi is gonna perform monumentally better as opposed to the X100. And just to really prove my point, here you go. 500% crop. Yeah, you can't even see anything on the X100, it's so blurry because obviously it doesn't have any medium range telephoto. But what both of these two have are of course the periscope cameras, and well, the X100, it's very dark, definitely very dark, but I also see significantly more sharpness on the X100. Maybe the darkness and the high contrast is helping in that regard. That could be a possibility. So of course I'm gonna crop into 500%, and yeah, it seems to be helping because I see a lot more detail on the X100. There's less processing, less artifacting, and that's quite impressive because Xiaomi's 5x periscope is very high quality, the sensor is beautiful, but the X100 is pulling ahead by quite a bit, so that's quite an achievement if you ask me. And that brings us to the end of this comparison, and man, again, I'm pretty sure very long indeed, no question about that. But what I do think is that the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, considering that it's a previous generation device, it's quite something. It stacks up against the X100 Pro, which I think by far is easily the best photography camera that I've ever used. It does a fantastic job, no question about it. But the X100, oh yes, it's got some good stuff. The only real complaint that I have, the only real two complaints that I have by far, are that the selfie night mode doesn't work, and the night skies can sometimes look too blue and too bright. That's it, really. Both of their pros and cons. I think the Vivo in general has less cons as opposed to the monumental level of pros that it has, so that's quite nice. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you guys sooner with many more to come. Cheers.